If you haven't had a wage rise for a while, you're not alone. Wage growth in Australia is at historic lows, and while wage earners find it harder to make ends meet, the issue has become a political headache for the Turnbull government. Some economists argue that stagnant wages are actually driving an employment boom. But as our reporter Tom Eagleton discovered, getting a job is only part of the story.
Angus McDonald is feeling good about his future.
I don't need recognition. I'm on a mission. I'm paying dues. I'm in position.
I'm doing quite well for myself.
You're doing good. I'm doing great.
The 21-year-old podiatry student earns $25 an hour as a part-time gym instructor. Not a lot, but he lives with his parents, so it's no sweat.
I'm very happy with where I am financially and where I'm going.
It's not just the money.
The wage is at minimum, and when you know your worth is more, you make your own curriculum.
Jobs helping him work his way into a future career and maybe more.
In the future, I do hope on running my own business.
It's an enormously competitive environment, and so we're just struggling to keep up.
Susan Kingsmill is Angus's boss. The gym employs about 30 people. Her family's run it since 1981, and she says the competition's never been tougher.
And just 6 more. You're forever looking at ways to reduce the costs and lift the perceived value of what you're offering.
Sarah, lovely meeting you.
Workers like Angus help.
We are very fortunate to be able to employ somebody like Angus.
Any interested in personal training at all?
Young, keen, and with low personal overheads.
So he's prepared to take on a position at a wage probably less than his real worth. Yeah, your bar, breathing in.
It's a brutal reality, but like many employers, she's balancing staying in business with doing right by her workers.
I always had an objective to raise everyone's wages by the 3% each year. In the last few years, that's been really hard. Breathing out, that'll do, load it.
When I do end up getting my personal training certificates, I do want to, up my wage a little bit myself. Build up some clients, and earn a bit more than I am now. But then, in 5 years' time, I do have set goals that I want to achieve.
It never occurred to me that I was meant to get a pay rise.
I've been doing it for about 10 years.
31-year-old former pharmacist Sahar Khalili had a similar life plan to Angus McDonald, but it didn't work out. She earned $35 an hour for 5 years. There was no pay rise despite her growing experience.
I wanted to acquire housing and be able to afford things like holidays and going out with friends more. I guess it's more just about quality of life and realising that the amount of hours offered by pharmacy and the amount of pay offered by pharmacy wasn't really fulfilling that.
She'd studied hard to earn a degree to get into what she thought would be a good career, only to give it away. Now the only time she dispenses pills is when she takes her morning vitamins.
You find that rent increases, petrol increases, food always costs money, but when you're getting paid the same amount, it just doesn't seem to make sense.
As wages have been growing slowly, other basic living costs are up sharply, especially power, health and housing. Normally wages rise as unemployment falls, but that hasn't been happening. Even the Reserve Bank's economic forecasters are confounded.
The forecasting frameworks that we've been used to are starting to break down, which makes central banking and Treasury forecasting that much harder.
Economist Warwick McKibbin's a former Reserve Bank board member. He blames structural economic changes like globalisation and automation for turning off the wage growth tap. But his solution hasn't changed.
To get higher wages, we need higher profitability, we need high productivity driving that.
Always the orthodoxy was if productivity went up and businesses were doing well, then wages would go up with it, and that orthodoxy has been broken.
ACTU boss Sally McManus says stronger bargaining power for workers and an increase in the minimum wage will boost both pay and employment.
Working people, low-paid workers, spend that money in the economy, and what happens then? Employers have more money they can use in order to create jobs.
But Warwick McKibben says that's wishful thinking.
It does increase the purchasing power of those who have a job, but it also reduces the purchasing power of those people who lose their jobs because their wage rise above their productivity. You can always pay higher wages, but if you're paying higher wages to unproductive people, then eventually you go broke.
Warwick McKibben says fundamental tax reforms needed to get the economy moving, and the government's plans are a good place to start.
My own modelling suggests that a cut to the company tax rate will drive wages growth, but the problem is how it's paid for. And if it's paid for by borrowing and increasing the deficit, it's not going to have as many benefits as you would expect.
But Sally McManus argues corporate tax cuts won't work, even if they're passed on to workers as higher wages.
Let's just say they even did that like in a once-off bonus. That's not what we want. We want a system that's balanced into the future so that you make sure both sides of the equation have fair bargaining power to be able to increase wages along with productivity.
I don't need recognition.
For workers like Sahar Khalili, that's a powerful message.
If you cut costs in your products or your services, someone is going to lose out. Someone is going to be exploited, and that's not going to be the big boss.
And two more.
But for business owners like Susan Kingsmill, the realities of the modern economy suggest something quite different for workers.
You've really got to be extraordinary, you've got to be special, and you've got to be real lucky to get the sort of financial rewards you're probably entitled to.